Starting lineup: Darius, Warwick, Jinx, Caitlyn, Lux up against illaoi, Rammus, Vayne, Tristana, Soraka. Rating of the picks for a casual game: Darius as a top, 8. Warwick in the jungle, 8. Jinx as a mid, 0. Caitlyn as a shooter, 10. Lux in support, 6. Rammus in the jungle, 6. Vayne as a mid, 1. Tristana as a shooter, 10. Soraka in support, 5. Let us consider the score system for a moment. A 5 to people who are playing it out of position when it can possibly work out. We're giving a 0 to people who play it out of position when it cannot possibly work out. What that means, cannot work out, is that in the long term, there is no way that you will get away with this. League of Legends, very large part of the excitement, of course, is that you never know exactly how things will turn out in the moment. So you could have, for example, Ashe as a top drawing first blood at some point, and she could successfully do that, but that will never last in the long term over many games. In this case, Vayne as a mid will never work long term, considering a multitude of games you will not be able to pull it off. We give you +1 here, which would be a 0 +1, because you have picked a champion who has some basic tools to help you mitigate this disastrous situation that you've put yourself in. Jinx, your opponent, does not have basic tools to mitigate this. There is nothing in her kit to ever make this work. Vayne could do some basic things that could help her on some basic level. And with that, I will emphasize the bread and butter of this channel, which is describing champions and how to play them within the casual environment. On January 9th, the Noxus season will be upon us, and ranked mode will have meaning again. We will get a full reset with a clean slate. Let me advise you on casual all-stars that could solve the game for you. In top, we have illaoi for the 5 all-stars of the Noxus season for casual play, lower tier play. illaoi is frequently going to draw a double team, which will put your teammates in a situation where they're going 4 on 3 because there's only 3 players left since 2 players are fighting illaoi. illaoi does extremely well with heavy plating such as Thornmail, such as Skanik, and has a favorable defensive development so that she can always grind it out. You will not have to make super quick decisions with illaoi, which is something that casuals are bad at. In jungle slot, we have Wukong. Wukong always has an out, which is one of the things that the pros love so much about him, but he's also very casual friendly because he has massive natural stats. It takes 1,000,000 years for Wukong to die, and you can always get away with the clone. He's a half assassin, half tank, so you get that natural toughness that Warwick has. But since you can clone yourself and get away, you essentially get twice as many game opportunities as Warwick. In mid slot, we have Galio, a faker champion and one of the top 3 omnipotent champions in the video game. Galio has the potential to change the outcome of any game. He is, by a nautical mile, the most underrated champion. You will have a massive amount of time to learn on Galio. Long story short, he doesn't have a weakness. You have massive decision-making time on Galio, but it doesn't take away from his offensive potential. He can still do massive damage despite being able to stay up so long that it's almost impossible to make a mistake on him. You always have the time to outthink your enemy, and that's the most important thing for a casual champion. Because of the magic burst, you will disrupt the enemy team because they will have to adjust their build pattern. In shooter slot, we have Yone. In the strategical sense of the game, Yone gets a lot of his relevance from his multipliers, which means that when you buy an item and it is the right item that fits, you will get way more than what you pay for. The crit value, the attack speed will multiply your ability cooldown of the first spell. Yone can hit in a very wide arc, and the essence of this champion promotes serenity, because when the soul leaves his body, you can always get back to safety, which means that you do not have that hectic energy of Kaisa or that hectic energy of Jinx when he has the correct items. Nobody hits harder than Yone. The perfect shooter. In support slot, we have Leona. Like with so many of these all-stars, you're going to have a lot of time to react and time to think. It doesn't go zip zip, which is crucial for casuals. You can do so much on Leona to disrupt the enemy team, arguably the most helpful champion in the video game. All of these picks, Illaoi, Wukong, Galio, Yone, and Leona, receive a 10 out of 10. If you played them in combination, you would dramatically increase your chance of doing well in ranked in this season. We start off with a pet peeve of mine. We are 4 minutes into the game, and this Vayne player who decided to play marksman in the mid lane is sending out a bunch of pings to say that she absolutely needs assistance and she absolutely needs to be helped and to get help. It is triggering. The top lane and the mid lane are privileged positions. Very frequently, as a jungler, you are far behind on leveling and you are getting your Baz beat because of the fact that you are behind. Scrapping non-stop to try to somehow get enough jungle creepers so that you can keep up with the rest. Down in the bottom lane, the two people with the highest emotional tension are always the support and the shooter in casual games. It is not the blue tank and the red tank or the blue mage and the red mage that have the greatest amount of beef, but rather it is the support and the shooter that are on the same team that frequently have beef. There is tremendous tension in the bottom lane. There is tremendous emotional distress and an emotional burden. Playing in the bottom lane is much more difficult, emotionally speaking. That means that we are doing you a huge favor by letting you queue top and mid. You are getting the privileged position. It always makes me angry that they are the first persons who start crying like a baby. You play mid, that is the most chauvinist, privileged star position. Stop crying 4 minutes into the game. You're saying, I need assistance, Wah, wah. You're starting to cry. You're saying, I'm going to claim this whole lane and then I can't handle it. I immediately need other people to take care of it. I just want it on my name, but I want other people to take care of the burden. And the worst part is, it's always the people who have it the easiest who are crying the hardest. In the long term, these people will drag any team down. In the beginning, you should absolutely be able to handle your own lane. That is nobody else's responsibility. And a jungler, let me tell you as a veteran jungler, a jungler is not a maid. We have here the 3 initial kills between Illaoi and Darius. First kill, and you see that Darius cannot make up his mind between going after the tentacle and going after me. There is confusion, and he decides to deny the offensive capacity of the tentacle, pretending like it isn't there. Do you know how you can defeat illaoi? I'll tell you. It doesn't have anything to do inherently with illaoi. The vast majority of illaoi players that you're going to go up against are going to use awful items. In most cases, if you are playing in the top lane, you are a tank. So choose good tank items and you will be able to outlast and beat illaoi. Because many illaoi players will inefficiently build warrior health items, warrior burst items on illaoi that do not work well. Most illaoi players will start off with a bunch of boots that don't work well. The reason why I very rarely get beat is that I instantly turn illaoi into a super heavy tank. We have your second kill, and some nerves are coming into play. You see Darius with that twitchy, nervous flash spell, randomly just flashing in the middle of an exchange, very uncontrolled. He doesn't know where he's going. Decision-making problems here. And we have Rammus attempting to steal that second kill, but forgetting about his ball form. The third kill, and those tentacles are used as a lure and as a bait. I know that later in the game you will be forced to go after them if you want to get to me, so I patiently wait until you get to the tentacles and then I use my poke spell, which pulls your spirit out from you. Don't forget, if I destroy the spirit, 3 things will happen. 1, you will get an extra burst of physical damage sent your way. 2, an extra tentacle will reside inside of you and jump out at any time. 3, you will be slowed. The reason why I'm listing these 3 things here is because I've noticed that key to playing illaoi is that almost everybody who opposes me and who plays against me has no idea of what that spell does. If you have no idea what your enemy does, you have a very poor chance of defeating them, which is the reason why I am playing illaoi myself, because I want to understand what she does. We have the blossoming of Vayne here, because once every blue moon, and whether this is good for you or bad, I know not, because ultimately you are being taught here to do something that will never work in the long term, but this is part of League of Legends, the unpredictable, and so we have corpse hyena hunting here, with whatever is left of Warwick going to take him out, chase him down. When he has nothing left in the tank, we're gonna have the enemy Jinx here, ready and willing to feed Vayne as much as possible. Jinx, who believes that League of Legends is like lifting weights, and all you have to do is pull harder and pull harder and push harder and push harder, and it is a test of physically pushing up against each other. And so Jinx is going to commit to that and not move and just stand there until she's dead. And then in yet another test of strength and test of will, Jinx is going to position herself directly underneath an enemy turret and bravely tough it out until Vayne ultimately claims everyone. If it would go like this every time, then Vayne would be an excellent mid. And not only an excellent mid, but Vayne would be a superior mid. At the absolute apex of everything, nobody can get as strong as a marksman, because they always have that innate range, and so when you have them built in deep endgame victoriously with a bunch of crit chance and attack speed like Infinity Edge, like Phantom Dancer, they will become monsters. That is one of the 3 most fundamental traits of a marksman. That is why, to show off online and flashy gamer words and league dialect, you will frequently see people call them carries. They are a carry because they can put the whole team on their back and carry you to victory once they have a set of perfect items. And so this is precisely what you want to avoid as the enemy team. You want to deny marksmen as many chances to grow as possible. Because if the game were to go on forever and ever and ever and ever, then characters like Vayne would instantly kill something in a split second. Choosing to play illaoi is all about experiencing double teams. You will get double teamed in every game, which much like in basketball is a good thing because it means that the fifth player on your team is always completely open to make a shot. And in an almost comical way, Warwick is going to copy the behavior of Darius here and in a mirror image start on the tentacles, and he looks over to see what Darius is doing, and he finds that I have activated the tentacles that are going after him. Darius dies in 4 seconds, and Warwick says to himself, "This is not my cup of tea," and he F's off. We have some more freebies for Vayne, and it is at this point unclear if Jinx and Vayne were on comms together, because it is impossible to give Vayne more free weapons and free money if you tried. We are almost 14 minutes into the game. Vayne is legendary, and she is still crying for assistance and saying that she needs help, which is interesting. Darius is going to, like most ops, give up, and he's just going to abandon his lane, which, one thing about League of Legends is you have to love the logic in it. Areas in which it is a far greater game than, say, Diablo or, say, World of Warcraft. This element of logic is just like, listen, the number is always going to come after you and the truth will always come out, right? This hypocrisy of leaving the lane is never unpunished, which is a beautiful thing because you signed up for something, you took somebody else's spot. Top is highly desired as a position in the casuals, and you took somebody else's top spot in order to play top, and now you're abandoning it. You see this morbid spectacle of Warwick getting mowed down by the turret, which is just so obscene in terms of how squishy can you make Warwick? How hard are you trying to make him fail? We're going to have Jinx here bizarrely knowing how to activate the Rift Herald a second time. Almost all of the work here is being done by the turret, and Vayne takes all the credit for it. Rammus is then crowd controlling and confusing Darius. Darius is seemingly a bit weaker than I initially thought. I've noticed after going up against him that Darius incentivizes you to build attack damage because his guillotine ability as well as his hemorrhage scales off of pure attack damage, which is really concerning because it means that they took something else away from him in order to give him that attack damage scaling, since League of Legends is a balanced game. Thus, it seems very likely that he is objectively inferior to Garen, because he is spread across attack damage, ability haste, and tank items. He needs ability haste and tank items to close the gap and to take hits, but apparently he also needs attack damage in order to be functional, which is difficult because now you have to build for 3 things instead of for 2, which is confusing, difficult, hard to do, and expensive. Taking a look at the scoreboard here. Warwick is one of the 5 most popular champions in casual play. The most important reason behind Warwick's popularity is how easy it is to play him. He's possibly the most simplistic and straightforward champion in the video game. You're a big wolf, you bite things, you claw at things, you regenerate. That is the entirety of Warwick. One other reason why Warwick is so popular is because he by nature masks one of the greatest flaws in the casual community, which is the number one thing in which I'm different from the casual community, which is to say the average casual has atrocious builds and atrocious IDs about what items to get. So here you had 5,436 gold, and for that you purchased a pet and you purchased Tiamat. And so you're essentially leaving Warwick entirely defenseless, and you somehow end up with 2 kills and 3 deaths, which is a good record on a losing team for a jungler. And this is purely because of the fact that Warwick is so tough by nature and so has such high basic stats by nature that this constantly wrong building is completely covered up. And this reminds me about what a YouTuber, One Azeroth TV, Metro, has said about his game World of Warcraft as to how the heroic dungeons influence the mythic dungeons, in that the value of the damage is so forgiving in the heroics that players end up being taught wrong, and they believe that they can tank through everything because of the fact that that is the way that it is explained to them on the lower levels. And Metro said this is a structural problem where you're teaching and incentivizing people not to change. And that is very much the thing that we have going on with Warwick in League of Legends, is that Warwick is a good solution if you've never played, yes, but he's also a problem because of the fact that his base stats are so good that it covers up every mistake, which is how you get the Cult of the Ruined King. And I would go as far as to say that 80% of the online build guides on Warwick are entirely wrong. And they take those values, young players take those values that they learn from succeeding on Warwick to higher levels of play, and they either get emotional breakdowns there, or they fail, or they end up never understanding the game, or they end up trashing the game, or they end up quitting the game. And this is all a consequence of systematically being taught wrong on Warwick, because you learn to do things that you could never get away with on other champions, which this build is obviously just the destruction of Warwick. You couldn't make him weaker if you tried. This is a very good start for Caitlyn. A very, very good start. Nearly perfection. And very smart not to waste room here or gold on trash in the beginning. Getting straight to it, buying only what matters. Yeah, very good. This is a correct way to build Jinx. Very good build. Very good build, and you didn't waste money on nonsense. One of the elements about Jinx is that you can put her together completely correctly and appropriately, and you will notice that she still does horrible, which that is just Jinx. The billboard girl of League of Legends. The #1 pop character in League of Legends. Jinx. Even when she's right, she's still wrong. We see here that Darius went on a little bit of a promenade here, and it didn't much help him. We see here that Rammus has a tendency to stray too far from turrets and anything that could help him, imposing structural borders and supporting fire to help him survive. And this would be the definition of an isolation. Moving on.
If I hate something, I destroy it. If I want something, I take it. You live as Nagakevoros in chains. Good. First easily. My god is not love. It is a kitchen.
Slain an enemy.
The minions and me.
An
Me
ally
and the
has been slain.
minions.
I like this.
Deep, sexy love.
An enemy has been slain. An ally has been slain.
Freedom is free. A kick in the head. All of us.
An enemy has been slain. You have slain an enemy.
Reality is brutal. Life is too short for fear. Ocean. It is our desires that stir it.
Killing spree.
The waves will drag you down unless you fight to shore.
An enemy has been slain.
You think you can kill me?
An ally has been
I
slain.
break hearts. I break spines. I want you to learn.
Killing spree. Rampage.
Sheyutu Nagake. Nagake Poroshe. Shock. It is not what we have. It is what we can throw away.
An ally has been slain.
The sea is ripe for battle. My name is illaoi. souls. There is joy in food and fighting. I am a teacher. Bilgewater will learn. Ha! This is monster! To learn.
Rampage. Dominating.
Even if I die in motion. Life is the sweetness of fruit and the joy of battle. Bahrula. Only what moves, only what lives has value.
Godlike.
You are not in motion. The vortex is over. Let's begin again.
Turret plating will soon fall.
Lives, moves.
Legendary.
We are not one soul. We are many. Men live, men die.
Your team has destroyed a turret.
This ends one of two ways. They run, or I break them.
An ally has been slain.
Blessed is motion.
Your turret has been destroyed.
They need wisdom. They don't need teeth.
An enemy has been slain.
We must only act. Koiboru, Dani, Shi. It is terrible to be satisfied. The world needs us to chase dreams.